Hi, I want to demonstrate to you a little bit about how to use hokusai to analyze the sound recording that you have to determine the speed of sound. This is a tricky thing. This is not simple. This is not obvious. And let me just walk you through it. So I have a recording here. It's a little older. It's from a previous year. It may not have the same sequence of events as on your recording, but let's just listen to it, okay? Here we go. See, I've got the phone here, recording it separately. All right, here we go.
This is Hannah and Ella at the 50-meter mark. I can't put it on the ground now. Okay.
Rubbing against.
Ready? Yeah, we're ready.
Here we go.
Ready two. Ready. Ready three. Ready four. Ready. Ready five. Yes. That's the gun.
Great.
Okay, there's our recording. Our job is to, thing number one, find the place where the shot happens. Thing number two, zoom in there and separate out the sound of the shot that traveled by air across the field from the sound of the shot that came out of the radio and got there first because it arrived at the speed of light. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out and make sure that I've got the whole clip showing. So notice that originally it was like this, and
This
it's
is
playing
Hannah and
along,
Ella at
blah, 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 and like it can disappear, off the end of the track. I don't want that. I want to be able to see the whole clip. So I'm putting the whole clip. Other thing to notice is I am holding the phone in horizontal. This is going to be a nightmare if you hold the phone. Don't do that yet. Hold the phone like this. So the other thing that's worth knowing is that little blue triangle-y thing that's called the playhead. It's kind of like, we're playing from right here. You can grab that and you can slide it back and forth. That's called scrubbing. So I'm going to scrub. And it can be really helpful for finding the location of the shot. Like I can listen. Some wind music. Wind sound. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to scrub back over the gun. It's right there. And now what I'm going to do is zoom in. Now, here's the nice thing about zooming in is you can see what's going on. The hard thing about zooming in is when you scrub, everything sounds really weird because you're scrubbing over tiny little pieces of time. So now, okay, it still sounds like one shot. But when I scrub, have a look at this. You can hear it as two separate things. That's the radio. That's the air. I'm going to zoom in some more here. So now we can see, you can't do this just by looking, right? There's lots of crud on here. That's the wind noise. So I have to scrub. Okay. There's the radio noise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to point the playhead right at the beginning of the radio noise. Right there. The signal from the radio is always going to be messier and fat. I think you can see on this. It doesn't have this right sharp beginning for lots of reasons. I've pointed the playhead there and I'm going to zoom in. Okay, so I'm going to stretch. I'm going to zoom way in. Zoom way in. And one thing to notice that the sound wave looks all smooth at first, and then there's this moment where it gets all jaggedy. I don't know if that's true in every sound recording, but to me, that indicates that's the beginning of something different. I'm going to call that the beginning of the sound coming out of the radio. So I'm going to point the playhead at that place. I'm going to zoom in really hard as far as I can, and I'm going to read off that time. And here, it looks like it's between 23.600 and 23.602. So I'm going to call that point 23.601. So I'm going to write that down. That's my first time. That's the beginning of the sound coming out of the radio. 23.601. Okay. Before I do anything else, I'm going to zoom back out again because, again, it's hard to check the sounds when you're zoomed way in. So I'm going to zoom back out again. There's the beginning. That's the beginning of the radio sound. That's the actual sound of the shot coming with air. It's really sharp because when the gun goes off, the first thing that happens is a really hard compression wave comes out of the gun. So unlike with the radio, we should be able to see a really sharp beginning to that sound. So I'm going to roughly point my playhead at that place, and I'm going to zoom in. And now you can see here we've got these really, really sharp compression rarefaction. That's that first zoom. I'm going to say it happens right about here. And so now I'm going to zoom way in, and I'm going to read this off. And I would say here, like that first really sharp change in air pressure happens at 23.752. 23.752. So I'm going to write that down as my second time. The time delay is the difference between those two times. One thing to be aware of, if you go through this process and you find your times and you calculate out your delta t, you should expect to find a time where a delta t, a change in time, that you wouldn't expect it to be way less than 1/10 of a second. So that's 0.1 second. So if you're getting like 0.02 seconds for your delta t, there's probably something off. Like you probably have picked one of your times wrong. So maybe a little bit less than 1/10 of a second, but not much less than 1/10 of a second. The longest we would expect for a really, really long distance, so this would be your, more than 150 meters away from the gun, we would expect to find a delta t of about half a second. So if you're getting a delta t of like 1.2 seconds, there's probably something wrong, and it's worth going back and checking, okay? So that's the idea. First you say all the way zoomed out, boop, all the way zoomed out, all the way zoomed out. You listen to it. I'm far too far zoomed out. You scrub for the time. Bam, there it is. You zoom in somewhat. You find the first time. Point to it. Then zoom way in. And read off your time. Okay, there we could hear we were like, so you read off your time. There it is. And then to find the second time, you zoom back out again to make sure that you're not finding part of the same thing. You slide over. You find the actual shot. You point to it. You zoom in, and here you find, where's the beginning of a really sharp sound? Bam. Zoom in, read off that time. Okay, that's my advice for how to do this.